got apologies from Charles. Otherwise, we're all here, I believe. The minutes of previous meeting. Any comments? No? Proposer? Seconder? Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No. Only public companies.
Only that I'm a director of one of the companies.
Sorry, I have to declare an interest as well for the same reason.
Lord Holmes. And I'm a director of the holding company, I believe. And Optimus. I don't know, actually, I don't know if I'm a director of Optimus yet.
Yeah.
Am I a director?
I think we all three of us are. Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
That's happened, hasn't it? All right, thank you.
Good evening. I've got a question relating to an incident that occurred at my property. 3 years ago, a car crashed into my house, killing a passenger in the car, writing off my cars, causing serious damage to my property. Thursday, the 30th of January, the same happened again. Another life lost, £45,000 of damage to our property, cars written off, being in fear of our lives in our own home. But the difference this time, we'd sold our property and were due to move out at the end of February. Our buyers understandably pulled out. Prior to both of these incidents, I stood in this chamber on several occasions and asked the councillors what they were doing about the speed issue in Graiseley. Indeed, I asked the same question of the Chief Constable, Shinfield Parish Council, John Redwood and others. I also invested in a speed camera gun and provided the police with video evidence of cars travelling in excess of double the speed limit outside my property. I also petitioned the local village and provided this evidence to your councillors. The very small amount of SID data I have access to shows that nearly 60% of motorists drive in excess of 45 miles an hour in a 40 mile an hour zone and 61 miles an hour at school drop-off times in a 20 mile an hour zone, 81 miles an hour on a Wednesday evening, for instance. I've now lost the sale of my property and both my wife and I are petrified the same might happen again. 2 lives lost and 6 incidents in as many years outside my property. What are you going to do about this and in what time scale? A verbal, we will look into it, will not wash.
The penultimate sentence, or the ultimate sentence, is my next stop is the press. I've got nothing to lose, but that's the press there. The council and all the members in this chamber acknowledge the significant impact that this road traffic collision has had, both upon your household and local residents in Graiseley, as well as the families of the deceased and passenger injured, and extends its sympathies to all those involved, particularly yourselves. A police investigation into the collision is currently being undertaken, and the Council, as a highway authority, is participating in all relevant aspects of that investigation in pursuance of its statutory duty under Section 39 of the Road Traffic Act, 1988. The nature and focus of a fatal collision investigation vary from one case to another, but regardless of the circumstances, the overarching objective is to ensure the highest possible standard of investigation are pursued. It is important to note that measures to deter high speeds are already in place in the village, notably the existing 40 mile an hour speed limit, part-time 20 mile an hour speed limit outside the primary school, and a number of relevant traffic warnings. However, the Council is currently in partnership with the police collating relevant road traffic data, highway and safety information, and supporting data to determine what further engineering interventions might be considered to prevent such a tragedy occurring again. As you will appreciate, at this stage, much of the information required to inform the consideration is still being assembled, and until the investigation is concluded and the outcome of any coroner's inquest is known, it is appropriate there should be no statement from the Council about specific proposals. A full and detailed response will be provided in due course. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. I understand that the Council do not wish to comment on the current ongoing investigations following the 30th of January's accident. However, following the fatal accident in January 2017, please could you advise what process was followed, what measures were put in place to avoid a reoccurrence, and what criteria were used to determine those measures? What would it take for that apparent inaction to be changed? To be clear, Wokingham Borough Council could not now possibly justify doing nothing and risking yet another fatality or further injuries, or indeed the bad press that this question will undoubtedly generate.
I and we have every sympathy for your situation, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to reply to that in writing.
And the timescales for that?
I believe we reply in a couple of weeks. But, within a week normally.
I do appreciate the Council's sympathies, but on this occasion it really isn't necessary. The time for rhetoric is over. The time for action is now. There is absolutely no justification for this Council to wait for any further accidents, incidents, deaths, etc. on this stretch of road. It is simply a matter of putting something in place. And a 40-mile-an-hour speed sign is not going to cut it, I'm afraid. It's time for action. We can't wait 12 months. We've had 7 incidents in 6 years on this 100-yard stretch of road. You must act, and you must act now. You cannot afford to wait further time for further incidents like this one to occur. It's time for action.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper. Message received.
My question relates to a lady who is a resident of mine in Woodley. She lives at 11 Drovers Way. For the last several years, she's been living with a monstrosity at the bottom of her garden. Her garden is the length between me and Mr. Housel there. At the bottom of that garden is a 10-foot high warehouse that her neighbour has built. Now, my question is based around 3 applications, planning applications. The first of which is 182995, which was a retrospective application, and it was declined by Wokingham Borough Council Planning. The reason that they gave for the dismissal was due to the oppressive nature of the building on my resident at 11 Drovers Way. Would you like to sit down? The second planning application, 192408, was an appeal to the above dismissal, which was dismissed in itself by the inspector, an independent inspector, and later withdrawn by the applicant. The reason for the dismissal was due to the oppressive nature of the building on 11 Drovers Way. Then we come up with the third application by the resident, and this is 193302, which was the same in its entirety as the previous 2, but the difference was that they put some flowers on the top. I'm afraid just having to say that to you just makes me angry, because, you know, it is, well, there's a term that I'd like to use. It sounds like, you know, someone's taking the hiss out of us. Now, my view here is that a lot of the decisions being made by WBC Planning are not fair and just. I take the view that they're designed to avoid enforcement issues. And that's my question. Is that what planning are doing? Are they trying to fit everything in to keep everybody happy and to avoid enforcement issues? And that's addressed to Mr. Smith.
I kind of heard the thread of this before when you come to the training session, so when I read this, I kind of got the gist of what you're saying. These applications relate to the outbuilding, as you said, in the rear of 37 Crockenmire Road, Woodley. The building was originally erected without planning permission, but following the investigation from the enforcement team, the owner exercised his right to submit a planning application referenced the 182995, which was refused and dismissed at appeal. However, when this was dismissed, the inspector commented that the outbuilding was not significantly different from what could be erected under permitted development rights, as you refer to, i.e. without planning permission from the council, and stated that a scheme could be amended by additional screening and planting on the roof to soften the impact on the building of the neighbour. Now, that report is available, that everybody can read it, and that was the inspector's report. A further application, reference number 192408, was with a hedge between the side elevation of the building and a boundary fence, but this was not suggested by the inspector, and that as the gap was too narrow, it was considered that planting would not survive, so the application was withdrawn, as you referred to. A subsequent application for the building was submitted, reference 193302, and included a planting box along the edge of the roof and a trailing rosemary to mitigate the impact on the neighbour. The enforcement officer and the planning officer visited the neighbour's address in January 2020, so last month, to fully assess the impact on the neighbour, and the application was subsequently approved as the proposal reflected that what was suggested by the independent appeal inspector. The officer's report is also available on the web for everybody to read, our officer's report. The objections and the inspector's comments and all other material considerations were taken into account.
Yeah, I find it hard to understand how putting some plants on top of what is already a towering eyesore for this woman improves the situation to the extent that it overrides the previous 2 dismissals by the planning committee or group. I mean, in all honesty, do you really think putting some flowers along the top of what is already a towering thing in front of this woman's house is going to improve it to the extent that you can now approve the planning?
Do you understand permitted development? And I'm not being cheeky when I say that, because
I do, to the point that this man's building is higher than permitted development permits. And it depends where you measure it from, but from the point of view of this lady at 11 Rovers Way, it is far higher than permitted development. He's built a ruddy warehouse at the bottom of a little garden. And you just willy-nilly say that's fine. Sorry, I don't mean to lose my temper.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I mean, the point you made earlier on about our officers, I think we've got a great team of officers. The bit that we can't control is the inspector and the independent inspectors. And the independent inspectors have said that that scheme could have been gone under permitted development with some softening and mitigation. And our team have assessed that, and they viewed that way, and they approved it. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I'm not entitled to take up any more time, but I'm going to ask you to go and look at this again. You can or you can't. It's entirely up to you. That independent inspector dismissed that appeal. You, in planning, overrode his report that dismissed it. I really think that, in all fairness, you need to look at it again, because it's blighted this lady's life. And I think that dismissing that quite so easily is grossly unfair on the lady. I'll stop there.
But I'm with enforcement tomorrow morning, so I will speak to enforcement team, because they did visit, so it wasn't just the planning officer that visited, it was the enforcement team as well.
Oh, thank you. I recognise the pressure the borough has been under as a result of the 2 recent storms Kira and Dennis. The recent fourth localised incident of flooding in Arborfield at the junction of Greenswood Lane with the Reading Roll has caused serious flooding, which I'm now pleased to say has abated. Can a plan be put in place as soon as possible to investigate the causes of the problem? As an aside, and on behalf of the residents of Greenswood Lane and the Reading Road, I would like to thank you, the council leader, for your visit to the houses last Sunday and your assurance that action was then underway to deal with the emergency.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening. The answer to your question is yes. Well, I'll just give you a bit of explanation to that. The northern section of Greenswood Lane, nearer to the junction A327, is shown on the Emergency Agency Surface Water Flood Risk Map as being highly susceptible to surface water flooding. Due to the surrounding topography, this means that during the heavy rainfalls, surface water runoff from surrounding areas runs off to this location, and in previous years has caused flooding on that road. Over the most recent winter period, the council is aware that the northern section of the road has flooded on 4 separate occasions following heavy rain. Each time, the council's contractors, Volker Highways, Balfour Beatty, responded by closing the road, delivering sandbags and pumping the water away. In addition, over the past month, Balfour Beatty and Volker Highways have carried out works to investigate the condition of the existing drainage system to ensure that the pipes were not blocked. The pipes were emptied of silt, and a CCTV survey was conducted which has shown that the piped system is in good condition. Furthermore, given how quickly the water levels have last Sunday receded, this suggests that the system downstream is clear. In line with the Council's Section 19 flood investigation policy, officers will be instructing a consultant to carry out a formal Section 19 flood investigation, which will involve an independent consultant carrying out an investigation into the causes of flooding, and they will then make recommendations for reducing the risk of flooding in the future.
Oh, thank you. I have a supplementary question. As a result of the pressure on the council as a result of storms Kira and Dennis, the emergency number unfortunately resulted in lengthy delays from the out-of-hours service. Can the leader of the council advise me as to what actions are planned to improve the emergency contact number, especially out of hours?
Yeah, I'll take that, Gary, as well, if that's all right. Yeah, if you remember, I mean, having seen your email on Sunday morning, I did respond, having rung the emergency number. And for me, I got through fairly quickly. But I note the delays that were incurred, and an investigation has begun, and officers will report on the investigation, and we will make sure that efficiencies are put in place to improve the communication.
And can I be kept informed as the progress on both issues, please? Thank you.
So that's the conclusion of members and public questions. So getting on for the business of the day, John.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is page 23, which is item 90. Okay, this item refers to the HRA, and just for people who don't know, it's the Housing Revenue Account, which is a ring-fence fund, which we hold all the social housing in, which is owned by the council. This is the council's second largest debt. It's £85 million. We decided to buy these homes back off of the government some years ago because they were retaining 50% of the rents, which meant we couldn't maintain the houses at a decent standard. So we took the opportunity to buy the 2,400 homes, which at quite a bargain price, which was around about £92 million.
Now, what I'm I'm bringing forward what we wish to do with the ring fence fund this year. Some of you may not know, but over the last 4 years, the council house rents in the borough have probably fallen in real terms by about 15%. And that was on the instructions of the government reducing the rents by 1% per annum for the last 4 years. Normally, the rents would have gone up CPI or CRP, and that would have meant they would have probably gone up 2.7%. It's 2.6% depending on what inflation was at that time. Add back in the 1% that we took out, and as you can see, that's the saving that they've enjoyed. That regime no longer exists, so I'm making a recommendation that we review the housing, the rents on the garages and the shared equity as at the point that they're shown in the document. The reason that we need to keep pace really is to make sure that there's enough money, A, to service the debt, and B, to keep our homes at decent standards. The other thing that we're looking at the moment, which I'll be speaking about later on in the council, is we are looking at the feasibility of raising more money to buy more social homes. For years, we were told we couldn't do that. 18 months ago, the government took the cap off, so it gives us that opportunity to buy some more, or to build and to pay for some more social homes, which will go into this ring fence fund. So what I'm looking for tonight is approval from the executive for the increases. The increases are council house dwelling vents to be increased by 2.7% from April 2020. For garage rents to be increased by 2.38% and shared equity rents by 2.43%. Also, we do charge for homeless sleepers, and we've decided to keep that at £9.50, which is quite good value for money. I've been told by some people that the rooms that we actually rent are probably better than some of the rooms you can rent in some of the French hotels. So I just would like any questions. Thank you. Before I move on to this, you will see there's some additional documents. There was some information we didn't actually have before to put into these papers. One was the parish precept from Winnersh and also from the fire authority. So that's now included in the document that you should all have or be able to pick up from on the chair over there. Also, number 2, the element of the capital funding in the Treasury Management Strategy and medium-term financial plan has been corrected to reflect the latest figures. This shows an increase from development funding and the use of a small amount of capital reserves, which means our borrowing is reduced by £8 million over the period. There is no change in the total fund and no change planned to the capital programme, which still sits at 517 million over the next 3 years. The following changes just mentioned affect all the tables, obviously, in the Treasury Management Strategy and Medium-Term Financial Plan, and they have been restated. This is also to correct 2 small anomalies. Again, it doesn't change the numbers in the paper. And you will find the updated papers sitting on the chair. I'm happy to answer any questions on the capital programme. Thank you. This Treasury Management Strategy obviously is the way that the Council invests its funds, the way it treats its funds. The hand basically gives all the prudent indicators and tells us what we can and what we can't do. It's a management, if you like, of the investments. It's fairly comprehensive, as you can see. We've got an element of debt. As I said, social housing is about 19 million 85 million of that. And again, I'd just like any questions. Oh, I've got to ring something verbatim. I'm sorry about that. I ask the Executive to resolve to agree the recommendation set out in the Treasury Management Strategy as adjusted by the table amendments. I also ask the Executive to resolve to agree the recommendation set out in the Medium-Term Financial Plan as adjusted by the tabled amendments. Thank you.
So, Treasury Management Strategy, John. Have we done that?
I've just done that.
Okay. Medium-term financial plan.
Okay, we've done those three. Wait a minute. Okay. Have we done?
Any questions?
No?
No? All agreed? Yeah. So, we've done the capital programme, Hallion Revenue Camp, Treasury Management Strategy and the Medium-Term Financial Plan. Community Vision and Corporate Delivery Plan. In conjunction with the three-year financial strategy and the capital programme, we've developed the Corporate Delivery Plan and the Community Vision, which is basically the strategy by which we wish to achieve the improvements in the borough's activities and where the focus will be. Any questions? Questions? No? Those in favour? Thank you. Treasury Management Report. John. I think you and me today.
I think it is actually. Okay. Again, I mean, I've got the Treasury Management Report. The same issues that we spoke about earlier on also relates to this document where there are changes. Again, any questions? Yeah.
Just to congratulate either you or the officers, whoever it was that's managed to do a good job of investments and has actually exceeded some of the external markets in terms of the return. So that's good news.
Especially when you consider how cautious we are with our investments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those in favour? The supplementary estimate. This is not covered in the council meeting, so speak.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to propose a supplementary estimate to start some work that leads into the major programme to reduce traffic congestion next year, which is in the Council's vision and in the capital plan. We've put a large amount of money in the medium-term financial plan to improve technology around congestion. Ideas that we've got at the moment include real-time monitoring, improvement in traffic signs, reviewing our traffic-sensitive routes so we can push roadworks on traffic-sensitive routes out of hours so that they cause less disruption, and also some more intelligent signage and traffic signals so that we can actually reduce the queues. This supplementary estimate is to get started on this work because we'd really like to start delivering some stuff really quickly.
Not a question, just a point for members to note. As traffic congestion is considered to be one of the largest causes of carbon across our carbon footprint, I wholeheartedly support this and endorse it, and hope everybody else does as well.
Just to come back on that point, I read a paper recently which said that 40% of avoidable CO2 emissions were down to congestion. That's far more than some other things like moving people into alternative transport and that sort of thing. So I think this is a major step towards our carbon neutrality.
Would it be correct to say the core of this programme is given that we have a highest concentration of vehicles in the country per household and a fixed network, plus we're increasing our population by about 25% every 10 years, it's to make the network work better and optimise it.
Absolutely, there's no benefit to anybody of people sitting in queues, burning fuel, going nowhere, getting frustrated. We're a relatively, as you say, a very high car owning area. It's quite difficult for people around here to use public transport because we're a commuter belt, we're spread out. It's not like we're a big city. And I think this is really important to actually make our residents' lives easier, to let them get to schools quickly, to let them get to their work quickly, and to let them go about their lives without being disrupted.
Do you think we might start seeing some sort of product of what we're trying to do?
I think we'll see some small product immediately. For instance, the monitoring software that we're suggesting will allow the guys in traffic management to react to traffic jams and actually start diverting people away from areas where there are traffic jams, because it measures the relative performance of the road compared to normal, so you can see it lighting up when something unusual is happening. It allows them to react a lot quicker. It allows us to try and help residents avoid problems where they inevitably occur.
It is true that we have relatively little influence on utilities and the way they work.
That's absolutely true. If a gas main bursts, people have got to dig up the road and deal with it. The key thing is to try and avoid people getting stuck in the queue whilst the roadworks are going on. And when things are plannable, even though we have got a requirement to let utilities do work, if we have more traffic sensitive routes, again, we can push more of the planned but has to be done relatively quickly work out of hours and save it disturbing commuters on to and from their homes.
Okay, thank you very much. Some of you may and some of you may not know, we are now required as part of our housing delivery to deliver homes or delivered service plots for self-build. So a percentage of our houses have to be either custom or self-build. So we've decided, rather than have £1 million homes built all over the place, that we will be instrumental in helping people with self-build. So what we've decided to do is we've got some land which is in Wheatsheaf Close. It's open land, it's never been green space, but we've decided that in light of the fact we're going to be marketing these plots, and we haven't quite decided how we're going to do that yet, to self-builders, we would like to notify the local residents that it's being done. And so this really is a paper for us to be able to put the notices on the lampposts and notify in the newspaper that this piece of land is being dedicated or being considered to be dedicated to people wanting to build their own home in the borough. So I'd just like, the cost is about £600 for adverts and bits and pieces. So it's really about communication. So if I could just have that approved by the executive, thank you.
So this paper is about the fact that the council has a statutory responsibility for admissions to mainstream publicly funded schools. And it's a statutory requirement under the School Standards and Framework Act 1998 to make a decision every year about this matter. There hasn't been any reason to change anything, and the recommendation is that we determine that the arrangement should be unchanged from those in force for the 2020 to 21 for the years 2021 to 22. So there is no financial implications. There are no changes in the guidelines from the Department for Education. And I hope you will be happy to agree to the recommendation.
Say something.
Yeah.
Before we go, I'd like to thank all those members that worked on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which has probably given us the most transparent budget that we've ever had in this council. The time spent, the challenging, and the challenging of the assumptions and the conclusions. So I'd like to thank those members who actually served from the different parties. It was very enlightening, and it was very worthwhile. And I do hope that going forward, whoever does it will follow my lead, because I think it's a really important thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the business.